So I had a discussion around that time with somebody, and she wanted me to come up to her place in Topanga and like hang out, and maybe we should have a yurt up there. You should design something for us. And we're a really cool cul-de-sac up in Topanga, and we're all neighbors, and everybody's running like a nonprofit organization, and we're all so enlightened and so on. And we were talking about this, and I was asking her more about it, and she was like, I was like, yeah, like, well, if we put a yurt up there and you guys are also enlightened, you should like share it. Why don't you share the yurt? We could put it on like like in the middle of your cul-de-sac, and you could like buy it or something. And she was like, oh, I don't know, I don't really know my neighbors very well. I'm like, you're all like completely all running nonprofit organizations. What do you mean? And I thought to myself, you guys are like a commune, except you don't talk to each other. You're sitting there already all enlightened, you could share stuff. And it popped into my head, cul-de-sac commune. Well, there's another idea, like cubicles a commune and cul-de-sac commune. And they all start with a C. So it became this like project. It was like the C project. So then I drew that, and I thought, this is funny, this is crazy. But what if every cul-de-sac in America was also a commune? That'd be weird and crazy. So I drew it, just for whatever reason, no particular reason. And I drew that diagram. And then someone saw the t-shirt and someone saw that diagram, and they said to me, you should buy the domain name wannastartacommune.com. And she said it like on the side, just as a other part of the conversation, and I thought, never thought about that. I should do that. And 24 hours later, I had a whole business plan. The thing was just instantly a business. I mean that in a good way. I put that image on wannastartacommune.com, and about a week later, NPR, National Public Radio, emailed me, and they said, we want to do a story on your cul-de-sac commune project. And I was like, well, okay. And I'm no dummy, so I'm like, okay, great. And she was like, she wanted to do it on All Things Considered, which is 35 million people, 23 million people. So I was like, okay, good. She's like, so how many cul-de-sacs are communes? And I was like, it's like, well, I'm turning some cul-de-sacs in Los Angeles into communes, and you can just follow me as I do it. I told her this. I'm making it up in this phone call, basically. She's like, okay, great, I'll follow you. So then I had to go basically do it. So you saw, these slides are getting slightly ahead. I went and found 3 cul-de-sacs in Los Angeles who, for one reason or another, all agreed to play around with this concept of turning themselves into communes. That's one of them. And so I went in, and we organized a potluck, and I came into the potluck, and I was astonished to find every time that those neighbors had never been in the same room together even. They'd lived in 5 houses all looking at each other for 10 years and never once been in the same room. And I thought, wow, this is weird. This is kind of an intense illustration of where we're at culturally in America, that we're so far away from small is beautiful Gandhi villages, right? We are very, very far away from that. So it wasn't a very complicated thing. I said, you guys should be a commune and share resources. Definition of a commune on Wikipedia is a community that shares resources. Don't overthink it, just let's start sharing stuff. So we played around with that idea over a 3 or 4 month period, and NPR taped the whole thing and put it on the radio. And I found that in every case, maybe 2 or 3 times every meeting, someone would say to me, isn't there like an iPhone app for this? Can we not like do this online? Do I have to spend every waking hour with my neighbors right now to get this done? Can't we like create a childcare co-op online and like make this more efficient? And it reminded me like 3 years earlier of everybody saying to me, I want an eco shack. Can I buy an eco shack? Just as a tip, I know we're not in business school right now, but as a tip, if people ask you, are willing to pay you to do something, hear what people are asking you. This is a hint, right? That there's a business there, right? So I thought, okay, somebody has already solved this problem clearly with technology. There's no question about it. So let's go online and figure out how we can start a commune online. So I can Google everything. I'll Google resource sharing, I'll Google communes, I'll Google whatever I want to Google. And couldn't find a thing. No way to help anybody do any kind of resource sharing or any kind of deep community whatsoever online. So my story now takes on 3 different paths, and so I'm not going to be able to cover all 3 paths. They're all happening now in my life simultaneously. Let me just finish the cul-de-sac commune path. People did start sharing resources in very simple ways in cul-de-sacs because we agreed to focus on it. Maybe somebody spent an hour a week figuring out how to come together and plant flowers in a vacant lot in their neighborhood. Whatever. Nobody overthought it. It was kind of a simple approach. But in every case, people thought it was kind of meaningful and like kind of there was some, people saved money, which is the thing I care most about, but people also got excited about it. I figured if there was a kit or a PDF or a way to just let everyone else do this, that would be great. So I wrote a little book called Tools for Commune Starters, and I put that online. And everybody downloaded it and kind of did it in a low-tech way themselves. But behind the scenes, I wrote a business plan and got it funded to build a technology platform to share resources, and that's called Commune, and I'm going to touch on it at the very end. It'll be the kind of last few slides. But along the way, what I learned was that resource sharing is a really profound topic, and that my goal is not to have people start communes at all, and that's actually a limited goal. The goal is to basically remake our whole economic system. We have a cash-based economy that was designed. It is an invention. Someone invented money. It didn't grow out of the ground. We invented it. We can invent something else that works better. We have a cash economy now that when there's 25% underemployment, it doesn't exactly work very well since no one has any money. We also have a credit-based economy, which is considered to be the underpinning for the whole crisis we're in now. So that's a little bit faulty. And we don't have a third option. We don't have a third economic option. I'm proposing that resource sharing is our third economic option. I want to build an alternate economy for us that every day, everybody in this room can routinely share resources and save money and not have to use cash or credit if they don't have it. Okay, so that's a kind of big goal and a big idea, and I'm pursuing it. So I'm pursuing it at the business level, but I'm also pursuing it not as an artist, because I don't typically call myself an artist, but I'm pursuing it inspired by the Diggers. And you're reading manifesto, or let's just say kind of an idea from the Diggers right now. I hope you're reading it. It's kind of a crazy idea. The Diggers were a group in San Francisco in 1969 who proposed that everything would be free. That in fact, to charge for things was somehow completely irresponsible when we didn't have to charge for things. Their name, the Diggers, was inspired by a group in the 1600s, also called the Diggers. And those Diggers from the 1600s essentially invented communism. And they went, it was a charismatic farmer who actually invented communism in the 1600s. I don't know if you know this story, but I'll tell it quickly. The charismatic farmer in the 1600s, his field had frozen over and he couldn't grow potatoes anymore, and he was starving. And he had 2 or 3 people who were his friends who also were starving. And they knew that there was a commons in the middle of their village that they could grow food on. And they couldn't understand why that commons wasn't a place where everyone would come together and grow food and nurture their own community. So they went to the commons and they planted potatoes and were immediately arrested for doing so. And they were put into jail. So the charismatic farmer wrote a number of treatises that inspired the Diggers, one of which is right here. And those treatises said everybody should be able to share all our resources and not have value placed on basic resources, okay? He wrote 10 or 12 tracts. Everyone thought he was crazy and he died. He died in obscurity. Karl Marx, 300 years later, found those treatises and invented communism, right? But the Diggers' idea was not the idea that communism became in communist China. They were 2 different ideas. So the Diggers in San Francisco went back to that original idea.